Let me give you an update of what is happening in Taal Volcano, and I have a slide presentation to show you. First, I'd like to give you information on what happened last Sunday. Since March of 2019, we have raised the alert level of Taal Volcano to 1, meaning it is showing signs of abnormality. It has lasted for almost a year with no escalation of its activity. However, Sunday morning at around 11 o'clock, there was a significant change in its activity. And shown on the screen would be, one on the left side would be a graph showing the earthquakes. And you would see that there are not so many earthquakes hours before it, and it began to increase only at 11 o'clock. And by 1 p.m., we see that the graph is somewhat dark, meaning earthquakes have been recorded almost continuously, and by 2 o'clock, larger amplitude or energy of earthquake happened. What is shown there would be changes in the behavior of the volcano in a very rapid manner. On the other part of the screen would be two lines, green and blue. That is the results of monitoring of how the volcano is tilted when magma is moving up the crater. If the lines diverge, then that means that the rapid movement of magma has begun. And this rapid movement of magma only happened after 1 o'clock. So the story is something like this. The Taal activity initiation is like cooking a rice. When you're cooking rice and the water is already boiling, steam is produced and it tries to open up the lid. But the steam will not get out unless you open up the cover or the lid. Essentially what happened in the volcano is that during the explosion at 1 p.m., it actually opened up the cover of the volcano. And the magma from below, because of the higher pressure and the lessening of the pressure above, rapidly ascended to the crater and produced more eruptions. Prior to the actual ascent of the magma, we have already alerted the residents of Taal Volcano Island to evacuate because we will be raising alert level 2. You can see now that during the activities between 11 to 1 p.m., up to 2 p.m., up to 3 p.m., we saw sudden changes in the activity of the volcano. It started just steaming, and then the explosion started at 1 and became larger. And that is due to the fact that magma rapidly ascended, and by 3 p.m., it's already boiling the water. Next, please. After that, the eruption began to grow, simply because magma has reached the surface and began to boil many of the water inside the main crater until it exploded to very high levels. Next slide. The following day, we now see the magma reach the crater, and we see lightning flashes due to lava fountaining, meaning from the sudden eruption where steam was the driver of the explosion, by the following morning, lava is already coming out. Next slide. The problem, though, is that after that eruption on Sunday, we still see increasing eruption, but not to the extent of the Sunday height of the eruption column. But we began to record a lot of earthquakes on Sunday evening, and we have seen fissures on the ground, opening up and moving up the ground or subsiding the ground. But in other parts of the lake, we saw ground moved up and the water receded. And as we speak, Pansipit River has receded. Pansipit River is the only outlet from Taal Lake, and the water from the lake would go through the Pansipit River. So if it dried up, therefore, the access to the lake has been barred by the ground moving up. So the earthquakes and the ground and the fissures are related simply because the magma from below is still continuing to move up, and that threatens the possibility of a large explosive eruption. Next slide. We have recommended that the areas on the main island and those high-risk areas shown in orange within the 14-kilometer radius be evacuated because of the possibility that when the magma reaches the surface and the ascent is fast, voluminous eruption can happen, and not only we will see tall eruption column, but horizontally moving clouds of more than 60 kilometers per hour speed that will cross and move above the lake and reach the mainland. So therefore, next slide, what we need to do is ensure that there are no people on the Taal Volcano Island, no people on the high-risk areas within the 14-kilometer danger zone. We also need to remind the public that the access will put pressure on the roofs that might collapse by its weight alone or during shaking. And in the long term, after this activity, we need to make sure that nobody should be having permanent settlement on the volcano island, and outside on the mainland, the local government must be sensitive on the hazards that might arise again in the future for their own development planning. We need to make sure that we learn from this current eruption so that people will be safer in the future.